If things feel off with your running right now, you are not alone. I am right there with you. And a lot of the time when things feel off from like hip to foot, it's because our lower extremity is compensating and creating this torsion around our hip, our knee, and our foot and ankle. So the body is super smart. It wants to compensate and keep everything in alignment when things go off. But this isn't always the best case for us because it can lead us with a ton of what we call impairments or issues in the lower extremity. A lot of the time, what I will see as a physical therapist that has helped thousands of runners, when someone's running form feels off or things just feel off, especially in that single leg stability, single leg stance, is that their hip is in too much hip internal rotation. The tibia, which is your shin bone, is in too much external rotation, and then that foot and ankle go into overpronation. Now, for example, if you're dealing with ITB syndrome, you might notice that the outside of your knee, the lateral part of your knee is in a lot of pain, but maybe you notice too that your foot, maybe the inside arch, is also starting to develop some pain or discomfort. This is probably because of that lower extremity torsion. So let me show you exactly how to fix it. As we're running and we go into that single leg stance and the other leg swings through and things just don't feel right, maybe as they're swinging through as your foot lands, or even as you're pushing off the ground, you just feel like, I just don't have as much power or stability on this side compared to the other side. Now, when our hip goes into internal rotation, it starts to face, the kneecap starts to face more inward. So our lateral part of our hip pops out and then that knee starts to face more inward, creating this sharp angle in. Now to compensate, the tibia goes into that external rotation. So you can see the shin bone starting to point out at a diagonal, and then to really compensate and just keep everything in alignment, because this is going in, this is going out, and then the foot and ankle will go into that overpronation. So there's a lot of things going on here, and it can just feel really, really frustrating. Where do I start? What do I even begin with? Especially if you started with an injury at the hip or at the foot and ankle, and now it's just moving all around. But the truth is, you really do have to address the hip, you have to address single leg stability, and you have to address the foot and ankle, specifically the big toe. When your big toe is not stable, you don't have that arch stability, you're not able to control your single leg stance, and therefore you're not able to contract your glutes as much as you should. But when you have that strong single leg stability, because your big toe is pushing into the ground, you have that arch stability, so you're not going into that as much overpronation or uncontrolled pronation. It's not collapsing inward like we see a lot with a lot of runners. Then you're able to stabilize with that glute med. So there's a couple things going on here that we want to start stabilizing. We want to stabilize into that single leg stability, specifically with our glute med. We want to start strengthening and contracting into our glute max, making sure that we're loading our glute max. It's not just strong and squats and deadlifts, but we're actually loading it, and it knows exactly when it should contract in the gait cycle, and also stabilizing through our big toe. Now, this is something I've been working on myself over the past couple weeks, and one tool that has really, really helped me, besides just doing the rehab exercises to strengthen the glute med, strengthen the glute max, working on that single leg stability, making sure the alignment is good, you're not caving in, everything is staying facing straight ahead, you're able to hold that position, and that is all really, really helpful stuff. But one tool that has really helped me too is called the Mobo board. The Mobo board is this wobble board. I would call it like a wobble board 2.0 because it got an upgrade. Dr. Jay DeCary is a physical therapist running expert. He developed the Mobo board, and as you can see, there's a huge cutout where your toes go, because this is specific for those that need to stabilize through their big toe. Everyone should be stabilizing through their big toe, but especially runners, because we push off our big toe, we stabilize in our big toe in that single leg stance. So it is really important that we have that big toe stability. So this forces you to push down through only your big toe, and you cannot push down through your other four toes on each side. Now, the other cool thing about the Mobo board, so you can stand in that single leg stance, forcing that big toe to push down, but it also has a different type of axis compared to a normal wobble board. Normal wobble boards, you go front, back, and you go left, right. That's just not how our ankle works though. It's on a completely different axis. I would call it more of a diagonal axis, and that's exactly what he did. So when we're here, it goes diagonal like this and diagonal like this. So we're learning to get into that pronation, supination, inversion, eversion, exactly how your ankle moves. So let me show you how I use this board, because it has really helped my single leg stability just in the past couple weeks. And the crazy thing is, if I'm balancing in single leg stance on my weaker side, on my left side, I can hold this for a long time, like minutes, before my glute med starts to kind of cramp up or burn, or I start to feel like it's really working my glute med, even though I know my glute med is contracting, but it doesn't feel as fatigued when I'm in this single leg stance. But when I'm standing on the wobble board, it's a completely different story. Like I said, it's forcing you to stabilize through your big toe. So you're just pushing through your foot and your big toe. The other 4 toes are off of the wobble board in that hole. And when I hold this for about 20 seconds, I instantly feel my glute med turning on and fatiguing. It's turning on, I can feel it popping out if I'm poking on that area, but it really starts to fatigue quickly because I am being forced to push my big toe into the ground. This is not something that we are used to doing. It's not a movement pattern that a lot of runners have mastered. A lot of the time we'll compensate by putting weight on the outside of our foot, or so far on the inside, or even the inside of that big toe, which can help develop a bunion, which we don't want. So this is really good just to help you stabilize through that big toe. And there's a clear connection between the big toe and the glute, and just getting into that single leg stability, having the proper alignment. Because if I'm here balancing on a wobble board, I can't bring my hip into that much hip internal rotation without me falling off of this wobble board. So it really does help you learn that alignment and keep that alignment, so you're not going into so much hip internal rotation, so much tibial external rotation torsion, and so much overpronation. So that's why I love this wobble board. So let me show you what I'm doing with it. The first exercise, all we're doing is going into left and right rocking, but again, it's that diagonal. So I have my 2 boards on the bottom at numbers 1 and 3 as I'm rocking diagonal to the left and the right. So I do this about 15 times, forcing my big toe to work, my arch, I can feel it stabilizing, and this just helps with a lot of mobility too, which I love because we just don't take care of our feet and our ankles as much as we should. So once I'm done with this, I'll go ahead and switch out these boards, and I'll put them in numbers 2 and 4. Now I'm only working the right side or the left side, but if I wanted to work the right side, I would just switch and put the boards on the other side. So now I'm going from the left to the right in that diagonal motion here, really getting into some pronation. And it's that combination movement we're working on, which I think is really cool. We're not just going forward, backward, left, right. We're going into some plantar flexion, pronation, supination, dorsiflexion, just like how the ankle moves, because it's very rare, if at all, that we just go into an isolated movement at our ankle. So if you're having plantar fasciitis, this would be good. Shin splints, this would be good. ITB syndrome, Achilles tendonitis. If you're having what you feel like is just everything is off, this would be really good. Posterior tibialis tendonitis, this is a good one to have in your house as well. So once I'm done going through those rocker motions, now I'll just start to go into that single leg stance like I told you about, where I'm just holding this position, 3 sets of 30 seconds, just trying to focus on pushing my big toe into the ground and stabilizing. Now this is something I've worked up to because this was very difficult for me to do at first. And it still is pretty difficult because it's a wobble board, but it's gotten a lot better. After we've mastered and we're able to go through and stabilize in that static position on a single leg stance on the wobble board, we're gonna add in some dynamic movements just to keep challenging our foot, our ankle, our single leg stability. So I have a 5-pound weight here, and I'm just gonna bring it around my body as I stabilize on the wobble board. Adding this small dynamic movement really takes your balance to the next level, and it forces you to stabilize so much more through your big toe, which is super important for running. Now I'm gonna link the Mobo board below, and I'm also gonna link Mobo board's website because they have a ton of more exercises that are a little bit more advanced than what I can handle right now. But if you want to check it out, just check the link below, and I have a code for 10% off for you so you can get that Mobo board and start stabilizing through your big toe.